As we all know, since the beginning of this pandemic, it has affected our lives in so many ways. Many people are not able to travel, to work, or to carry out their activities. Thousands have died due to the virus. Governments and healthcare systems are grappling to curb the spread of the virus and to mitigate its impact. And the trajectory for further widespread disruption and suffering is still unknown. So while China, Europe, and the US have seen some of the first waves of the pandemic, it is also spreading to countries with ongoing conflicts and weaker care systems. In addition to the direct health and economic consequences, the important work of local peace building may be impacted, with consequences for how ongoing conflicts may escalate or can be positively managed during the immediate crisis and over the long term. Now, today, before we get into the conversation, I also want to acknowledge that many of us who are joining today are already affected in one way or the other by the pandemic. And we just want to send our words of comfort to you if you have lost a loved one, or if you're related to someone who is in pain at this moment. We want you to know that we stand in solidarity with you. Now, to get started with our conversation, I would like to invite our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves very briefly and to also tell us how has the pandemic affected them as individuals in this very moment. Maybe we can start with Michelle. Do you want to maybe start us off with saying how this has been affecting you in your own context?
So hi everyone, thank you for this opportunity, Christian. My name is Michelle. I'm a local peace builder in Suriname, and I'm a coordination consultant with the United Nations of Suriname. So definitely it has affected me because when the rest of the world is actually going home, this is actually what we do, stay in moments of crisis. We stay to support people on a local level and on an international level, and on a country level as well. So when the pandemic started, actually, it was just my first week. When it was getting really serious, we were starting to take action. It was my first week in the position of coordination consultant at the United Nations. And drastically, things have been changing in the way we communicate at work. We have to have certain protocols in place of social distancing. But aside from that, in my own community, stores are closing up because the supermarkets are trying to protect themselves as well. So it has been difficult to enter supermarkets, which creates this big crowd in front of supermarkets, which actually can have a bigger spread of the coronavirus if a lot of people are standing together. So people have started flooding supermarkets just to have food at home, thinking irrationally. So that has definitely affected me just as a young person, being part of society.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing that. And I'm sure this is relatable to so many of our online viewers, where due to the pandemic, there's been a lot of buying, and many people are really rushing to supermarkets. And also we've seen increase in prices of basic commodities. But I'd like to also give the floor to El Haj, who is joining us from Mali. If you can maybe tell us a little bit about your work and how the pandemic has affected you personally.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you so much, Mr. Christian, for giving us this opportunity to explain the COVID-19 issue in our own country. My name is El Haj Jite. I am the founder and CEO of Timbuktu Center for Peace, a grassroots youth movement focused on empowering the next generation of peacemakers in the West African regions of the Sahel. So in what concerning my country, Mali, it's really important to go back to history, so that since 2012, Mali was occupied by rebel groups and jihadists linked to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So with the COVID-19, the country at the beginning was not affected, but actually the spread is so huge because we are in 3 days, we have 18 cases of coronavirus. I personally work as peace builder in the ongoing conflict zone in the region of Timbuktu, but actually I'm in the capital city of Bamako where there is a curfew. So the relation between peace building and the pandemic is very huge here in Mali. As you know, there is international organization like United Nations and also consular mission working on peace building effort. But since the beginning of COVID-19 here in Mali, everything stopped. The entire country is at curfew, and in the capital city of Bamako, most of the NGOs workers are work. So as peace builder, it's really affect me because most of my partners are international organization workers, so they can't travel to Mali, and even though those who live in Mali can't work with me actually because everybody is under curfew and respect the government measures.
Thank you very much, Haj, as well, for sharing that. Indeed, it's affected a lot of partnership to continue being operationalized in this very difficult time. I just would like to remind our online viewers that you can also contribute to the discussions in the chat section. Please tell us who you are and where you're calling us, joining us from, and how this virus has affected you personally. But I would like to go now to my friend Gatwa, who is joining us from the Republic of South Sudan. Gatwal has unfortunately just lost his connection, but as soon as he comes back, we'll be able to hear from him. Now, I've heard you, Michelle, and El Haj talk of how this pandemic is affecting you personally, but we'd like to talk now to you if you can. Gatwal has come on, so we'll try to see if he can hear us. Gatwal, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you quite well.
All right. Thank you very much, Gatwal. Would you maybe also share a little bit about what you do, your work, and tell us how the pandemic has affected you personally so far?
Well, my name is Gatwal Augustine. I am a South Sudanese living in Uganda as a refugee, and I work with Young Adult Empowerment Initiative, a youth-led NGO that works with refugees, youth, and women in Uganda. That's what I do, basically. How the pandemic has affected me personally and my work. It has affected me in three levels. One, international level, because I was engaging in international advocacy, including UN, and we had scheduled a performance to take place in the first falls of the year, and all this has been cancelled out. So that's one point. The second one has been our peace building program in the refugee settlement. So we are hoping to conduct a lot of workshops, programs, and then our activity. And with the pandemics, all these things shut down right now. The banning of public gatherings, more than 10 people. So it also helps, our program area. And the third way it has affected me has been the confinement. So in Uganda right now, they shut down all the public transport. And literally, I was caught up somewhere. It's not in Kampala or where my family lives. So I'm in confinement. So I can't go anywhere for the next 14 days by myself here. And I think this is not only me alone. So many people who are doing peace building in Uganda, also in South Sudan, are also facing the same issue. But hopefully, we don't know what comes next.
Well, thank you very much, Gatwal, as well, for sharing how this pandemic has affected your work and also how it's affected your peace building work. Now we're going to move to exactly that very point, and I'd like to acknowledge some of our already participating online viewers. Thank you very much, Kimberly. Thank you very much, Reese, as well, for joining the conversation. Now, Kimberly has a very small question that is being directed now to Michelle. We'll get back to you very soon. But Michelle, Kimberly is asking, how has the United Nations been supporting the people in Suriname? Because you've mentioned that the UN, to some degree, is involved in trying to support in this pandemic. So maybe you can answer very quickly to that, and then if you can expand now a little bit more about how this pandemic has affected your peace building work.
Okay, thanks for the question. The United Nations provides assistance through the government, so we're supporting the people in the country through the government, especially through one of our main and most important agencies at the moment, which is the Pan American Health Organization, which is the representative of the World Health Organization in Suriname. We're providing the technical assistance, but also in terms of unmet needs we have at the moment. And the government may request assistance in terms of communications, although they're doing a great job when it comes to the communications part. But as a coordination consultant, I am included in that part specifically, which means we're doing a lot of raising awareness, especially through social media. We just started a Safe Hands Challenge to make people more aware. So it's technical assistance to the government, but also helping in terms of communications. Yes.
Very much. Now we're going to move to El Haj as well, but here we're looking more broadly at how, as you've talked earlier, El Haj, you've mentioned that the pandemic has not only affected your ability to move to different parts of the country in Mali where you're working, but it also limited collaboration with some of your international actors. Now, I would like to maybe ask you if you can say a little bit more. How do you think if the virus continues to spread is going to affect maybe long-term peace building work that you've been doing in Mali? Because this is now reaching its peak. So we're wondering if you can maybe tell us what do you think would be the implications for your peace building work in the long term should the virus continue to spread?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the brilliant question. So, as you know, in Mali, we have a population of 20 million of people, and it's really important to highlight that social life is one of the most very important thing in the life of Malian here in Mali. So, if the spread of the coronavirus in the long term, it will affect mostly the northern region, mostly occupied by armed terrorist groups. Because it's important to know that the spread in Europe has really affected the entire world, and most of international organizations working at ground here in Mali, including international forces, are like European forces and some African countries' forces. So in the long term, it will affect the movement of even these international European forces working on ground in occupied regions of Mali to securize communities and then fight against terrorism. So in the long term, the pandemic can be like a catalyst for terrorist organization to expand the network in this occupied region and then to be ready to prepare attacks, because actually, as you know, from different parts of the country, there is no movement, no patrols. The activities, even though they are not cancelled, some are limited, they reach to the civilian. So it's really, really hard. So for me, in order to get a response, the international community, international organization must make priority with African countries undergoing civil war. Why? Because the worst can happen.
Indeed, it can have a very devastating impact, as you've highlighted, El Haj. But I also want to say thanks to all our exciting engagement already online. Christiane Lang has joined us, and she says, "Hello, panelists. My name is Christiane Lang. I'm a peace researcher at the USD Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice, leading project on equitable peace funding between local peace builders and external donors." Christian, thank you very much for joining. We'll get back to your comment. We also want to thank Art Vos for joining us. Art says he's based in the Netherlands and member of the WWW Masterpiece Organization, which operates in 40 countries, and that you're working with Cell based on the US and want to develop trusted content on Corona and disseminate this via cell phones. Maybe we can mobilize as many change makers who can share their stories as well. Thank you very much, Art, for sharing that brilliant initiative you're working on. And this would be very important for all of us to join efforts in supporting local peace builders, and would like to learn more about that. Thank you as well, Sundra. My name is Sundra Lambert Baj, and I work with DCA on conflict prevention and peace building. I'd like to thank the panelists and everyone else for sharing experiences. Thank you again, Sundra, for joining, and looking forward to continuing this conversation. As we just mentioned, it's just the beginning of a series of live discussions that will look at different effects and impact on local peace building, not just in terms of their individual lives, but also their current peace building life. But I would like to move now to our friend Gatwal. You've talked about how this pandemic has affected your work at three different levels. Maybe as well, if you could tell us, should the pandemic continue in your context in Uganda, working with refugees, South Sudanese refugees, what is this going to be the implications on your long-term peace building work, and what do you think, how do you think that's going to affect you?
Well, thank you so much for asking that important questions. I think the most important thing right now is how to adapt new events that being rolled out by the pandemic. The change of the role from peace building to be a public health agent that can prevent the spread of the pandemic in the refugee camp. However, I must say that the government of Uganda is doing everything possible. We are sure that it is contained, it does not go to this settlement, because once it reaches these settlements, it will be really very hard, for it to be controlled. We're talking about settlement which are congested, has a lot of people with little sanitation, with a really very poor sanitation and equipment, but coming back, to the peace building work, we are working as a network of refugee-led peace builders, and we are trying to join effort with the government of Uganda to pull out contracts and separate this. And we are trying to see whether our roles as peace builders will continue, because right now there's a lot of issue, cropping up, starting with distancing, so we can operate often. We don't have right technology, to go and work, from home, because we are really under punishment in terms of equipment, computers, but we are trying our best to see whether we can, adjust our role to a role of public health agency that carry out awareness and campaigns and coordinate and send to the community the correct information or how the virus. We as of yesterday we have no case of the days, and this sent a lot of worries to most of us who are working there. Just fearing that in case this virus slip into the settlement, it will be really very hard to control. But we are Uganda, which is giving attention, and right sanitization is being done.
Thank you very much, Gatwal. Actually, you've raised some very important points here. You're talking, first of all, about the adaptability of the peace building field, because now we're dealing with a public health kind of issue. We need also to be adaptable. I think that's very important to keep in mind, all of us peace builders, to find ways that we can adjust our programs in ways that respond to the pandemic more directly. All of you three, I think you've pointed to the fact that you're working with international organizations and you're working across different contexts and across different organizations. One thing that I would like also to ask probably is, how do you think international actors should adapt in their ways they're responding to the pandemic, or in the ways they're responding to local peace builders facing this pandemic. I wonder if you can give some ideas or some prompts in terms of how should the international community really adapt to this pandemic in your context? What are some of the possible ways they can support you?
So if I can share my thoughts, I think one of the most important things is like this platform, an example. I think it's important for us to share what's going on in each country to get a broad view of what's really going on the ground and to share ideas and ways on how we're tackling this issue because it's especially for me, I'm Generation Z and I've never encountered something like this before. So it's very new and never have I witnessed a pandemic before. It has never been so close to home. So even within our local youth organizations, we want to support and we want to help during this pandemic, but the only way you can really help is to stay home. So I think it's important that we share knowledge and experience on platforms like these because through internet, through the connection, we can definitely communicate and see what other peace builders are doing on the ground and maybe get an idea or a thought of what we can do ourselves in our own country.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for that. Maybe we can also hear from Al-Haj. How do you think international actors should respond or should adapt to the current context and support to the kind of work you're doing in Mali?
So, Christian, thanks so much. This is one of the most important question here in Mali. So, how the international community can support local peace builder and other local organizations to face the virus. For me, it's really important for the World Health Organization to create a database where they can share, lesson learned, practices in North Korea and China, and then share with local organization, international organization based in Mali, how they can better, organize outreach programs against the virus. Because it's really important to understand that we live in an ongoing conflict zone, but actually with the pandemic, we entered in the theory of change in peace building. What theory of change means? We must adapt our peace building effort in order to fight against the virus, because it's important to let everybody know that no country, no organization alone can fight this virus. We must all put our knowledge together, coordinate our actions in order to get a new model to face the virus. That's what I really, request for the international organization. And another, request is also, as you know, Mali is one of the most poorest country in the world. And as we face this virus, in terms of economic dynamic, our country is not ready in terms of medical capabilities to face the virus. And the World Health, Organization, if they are hearing me, must, make a priority to send in the West African francophone countries suffer from the virus, adapted equipment, medical equipment in order to face the virus, because it's important to let you know that in a country of 20 million population, we have just like one respirators and then 20 beds. Do you think actually we have 18 cases? If the virus spread, do you think we can face the virus? It will be worse. So the international community, the World Health Organization must make a priority to start sending, equipment, medical equipment to these West African countries suffer from the pandemic, or it will be worse and late.
So sorry, Christian, if I can actually comment in support of what he just said, I think that's very important, especially in terms of medical assistance. In Suriname, we've received medical assistance from Cuba, and we're really grateful for that, especially in this time of need. One thing that we have as a small country, we have a population of almost 600,000 people. And what's really noticeable is the lack of capacity we will have when there is an outbreak, and how are we ready for that. One thing that's happening is because of lack of information that's out there, a lot of people have started buying face masks, use all the rubbing alcohol, which leads to a lack of this equipment that is needed in the medical sector. So even as the government has requested assistance, from international organizations to provide these things that are so essential and crucial, especially in this period, to aid the medical field to be able to help us in the proper way, because these are very important things. And I fully agree. We need to prepare, because right now we're not in a preparing mode anymore. We're in like high crisis mode, and we need to act fast and we need to act now, because one thing is very clear: in no way are we ready for an outbreak. The best thing we can do is manage it as it is now, and this is the most crucial phase where we will need international organizations to aid us in terms of knowledge, how to tackle this issue in terms of medical assistance or medical equipment as well. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, Elhaj, yes, you can go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle, for your inputs. Very important for me. And I would like to add one thing. It's important to know in the West African countries, we have doctors, we have experts, but this pandemic is new thing here, and it's really important for the World Health Organization and international community to send experts from those most affected countries who really know how the pandemic dynamic spread inside population, to share their knowledge and then to train our medical professional to be ready for that. And this is one of the most important points also to track on.
I think that's definitely true. Both of you have highlighted the need for not only spreading the word about the pandemic and also sensitizing communities, because prevention is better than cure. And as you've pointed out, most of our countries do not necessarily have the medical or the healthcare increasing cases. One other point that you've also pointed out to both of you is that community should act now, should respond now before the escalation continues on. We need to be able to act in providing medical equipment and assistance with communities that are affected. And I think, Elhaj, when you're talking about West African countries, we know that it's not just in West Africa, but there are many countries in Latin America as well, or in Southeast Asia, in Asia broadly, who are still grappling with how this pandemic can be mitigated in a broad sense. And maybe also related to that question on how the international community can support in this time, there's also a big question about funding. And I wonder if you have had any donors or global funders responding to this pandemic in a way, and what has been their approach? What are the donors that have been able to support, and what has been their approach to supporting local peace builders, either in your context or if you've heard of any cases of funding opportunities to support local peace builders? Maybe you could share a little bit on that as well. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I had to unmute. Yeah, so in terms of donors, speaking from a point of view from the United Nations, it's a high priority for us, especially, our main focal point when it comes to health, which is the Pan American Health Organizations, but also other UN agencies are aiding in and providing assistance in terms of freeing their budget, freeing funding to equip the government in terms of this medical equipment, because there has been a need, and I have mentioned that. So another thing is that a lot of companies in Suriname, big companies, a lot relative, to start this COVID-19 fund, to actually have donor money ready to be able to aid the local community, but also the government to tackle this pandemic. Because one thing is certain and one thing is sure, it will have the aftermath of this may If not, if we don't act now, it will have a lot of influence in our economic system.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing that. I don't know if El Haj, if you also have anything that you'd like to share related to how donors are responding to the pandemic, and if you have any cases of which donors have been able to support, what have been some of the best practices in integrating maybe flexible funding to support local peace builders in this context. I don't know if you have anything you could add on this.
Well, actually, here in the case of Mali, we are actually at the level of panic. Actually, there is no donors on the pandemic, but what's my idea is like, as you know, we are peace builders, and there are many donors and international community working on conflict resolution, stability, and security. They must adapt their mandate to the theory of change, and then change the strategic plan and add outreach programs, how whereby they can provide grants for local peace builders. Instead of working on peace building, they can start working on outreach programs on how they can prevent their grassroots communities against the virus, and how they can also equip the health services not only in capital cities, because it's really important to know the economic dynamic of this virus in Mali, because actually in northern regions in Timbuktu and Gao, mostly border from Algeria and Mauritania, as the foodstuffs become really expensive for a population live in a conflict zone, as you know. So the international community can also support those communities and how things can be better for them.
Thank you very much, both of you, again, for your insights. And thank you for sharing on some of these practical ways that international community and donor funding can actually be integrated in supporting outreach, as you've pointed out, El Haj, but also Michelle, as you've talked earlier, how it's very important for funding to be directed to the most needed organizations on the ground that are affected by, or that are working already on the forefront of preventing and sensitizing communities. I would like also to appreciate some of our online viewers. Thank you, Subindra Bogoti, for joining us from Nepal. You are leading an initiative called Peacebuilding Nepal, and we are going to definitely keep in touch with you as well. Thank you, Gateway Zimbabwe, for joining us. You tell us that your name is Tendisai Chegwindere, and you're calling from Zimbabwe. We are responding in various ways with and through our fellowship program and wider networks such as Citizens Manifesto. Thank you very much, Tendisai, for sharing that. Now I want to come to one of the questions that was asked by Michelle. Michelle says she is a peace builder currently based in the Netherlands, and she points to the fact that the UN Secretary General has called recently for a general ceasefire in light of the pandemic. Now, the question that she asked to us panelists is, how do you assess the opportunity for this temporary end to fighting in your local or national context? And probably here again, maybe El Haj might be the most appropriate to answer this question. Do you feel like there's going to be an impact in terms of stopping the conflict, this temporary ceasefire that the General Secretary has called for, or how do you feel like it's going to be applied in your context?
Well, first of all, in the context of the Western nation of Mali, it's really important that we have in the conflict multiple, actors. There are first of all the arms groups who are against the current government, and at second hand we have VOs, violent extreme organization. I think for ceasefire, it's really important to let the world know that it's important to have ceasefire with the armed groups operating in northern regions. But when it's come to terrorist, violent extreme organization, we can have ceasefire because they have another mandate, and that mandate is to restore Sharia law. So I think at political level, with this discussion with armed groups operating in northern region already engaged in a peace process, we can have a ceasefire. But when it's come to the second hand, as you know, it's not only Mali. The entire Sahel region is affected by violent extreme organization.
Thank you very much indeed, El Haj, for sharing on that. And it's very complex, as you just pointed out, that one thing is to have a ceasefire, and yet another thing is to implement it in a context that is permeated by conflicts and different extremist groups. But I think we hope that there's going to be more voice at the international level, but also more collaboration within our country context in terms of just trying to support our communities affected by the pandemic. Now we are coming almost to the very closing of our live conversation. I would like just to remind all our online viewers that this is an initiative that is going to continue. We want to really stay in touch. We want to build bridges between us. Please stay connected, share insights from your own context, how we can be able to support each other in this particular crisis time, as we know it's affecting everybody. So there's no one who can say that they are not affected in one or the other. But as we wrap up today, I would like maybe to return to esteemed panelists to maybe give some final thoughts on very specific and maybe concrete advice that you think we can jointly give to those supporting local peace builders around the world. If it is funders and international organizations, you've already mentioned some of the tips, but if you can maybe bring it in 3 concrete actions or 3 concrete advice that you think international actors and donor organizations tuning to these conversations may want to listen to, please. This is the moment. I'd like to maybe start with Michelle this time.
Okay, thank you, Christian. To the general public, I would just like to say, stay home. That's the most important thing we can do right now as individuals. In this case, we're not only responsible for ourselves, but for everyone around us. To peace builders around the world, I would like to say, please stay strong and please connect with each other, because now we need each other more than ever, especially in the grassroots community, and do not be discouraged because of this pandemic. To international organizations or international groups, I would like to say to reach out to these local organizations, because they are the ones in the community, in the most fragile communities, the most marginalized communities, working on the ground, and do not work past them. They are important actors, and they must be seen as partners in the fight against this pandemic. It's one where we need each other the most and where we need to work together the most. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing those very, very concrete pieces of advice and tips. Again, here, I think it's very important to remind all our online viewers that we recommend to keep social distancing, to stay at home, to wash your hands, and to stay
So, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think Christian is having a bad internet moment, but I think it would be a great intervention if you could maybe share your last points on advice to the international community as well to just the general public.
Hello? Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think you can just start ahead. I think it's just Christian's internet.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think you can just go ahead and continue. I think Christian is having a bad internet connection.
Yeah, what's the question?
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Rehab? Sorry, there's been a little bit.
For for a minute.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you maybe repeat one more time? I think I've lost most of what has been discussed there. Sorry for the internet troubleshooting. I don't know if Elhaj, you could maybe repeat your final statements on what international actors and donors can do to support local peace builders in this time.
Well, first of all, I would like to make a call to action to the international youth movement, grassroots youth organization, to work together to try to use internet communication technologies as a tool to fight COVID-19, like what we are doing. If we can create, a database of peace builder across the globe to have WhatsApp group, LinkedIn group, in order we can make a collective call to action. So at national level, as you know, West African countries, we face to corruption, bribery. So I urge, our leaders in the African continent to take this pandemic serious and to use the resources, to use the funding in the best way they can save grassroots communities, because it's not only at policy level, it's also at grassroots level. For the international community, it's important for us, intellectual of the world, to understand that no country can fight this pandemic alone. United, we will be stronger. So the leaders of the country must be united and then use their lessons, their practices, and then their mistakes in order to fight the pandemic. So I will finish by cultural diversity. I will use the Italian, hashtag Io resto casa. I think even in America, in Latin America, is the same. So for the entire world, Io resto casa. Please stay home and save the world.
Thank you very much indeed. That's a very beautiful and very touching way of actually closing this very first call. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Alhaj, for joining us. We're sorry we're not able to continue with our brother Gatwal, who lost internet connection. But again, this is part of the challenge that we'll have to navigate as we try to engage across boundaries and across the virtual world. Thank you as well to all our online viewers who have been able to join this discussion today. Please remember you can still continue to contribute to the conversation even after the call by putting your insights in the chat section. And I just want to again thank Peace Direct, thank Humanity United, thank Conducive Space for Peace, who have together, Peacemaker 360, come to start these online consultations in a way of trying to stay connected to local peace builders. And I look forward to our next conversation in just about a week. Thank you very much again, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much, Michelle. Christian.
All right.
Yeah,
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah.